Yes, I'm going to piss the Saints fans off again. You guys have no one. I don't know who your team is. Go back to New Orleans.
All right, this episode's sponsored by Prips. Prips, the only drink that makes you feel like it's the 1980s. All right, Mike, we're talking NFL free agency. Massive week so far this week. We're talking winners of the free agency period thus far. And I'm going to tell you, Mike, I have about 4 winners of teams that I think are clear winners out of the NFL free agency. And then we'll get to some of your honorable mentions later in maybe another segment. But our 4 clear winners that I have, I'm going to say it is the Houston Texans is a clear winner in the NFL free agency. You also have the likes of the Green Bay Packers. That is a winner this NFL free agency. And then Philadelphia being another clear winner, in my opinion. Giants fans, sorry, yet again, an abysmal free agency period for you. And then another clear winner, Mike, close to your heart. The Kansas City Chiefs, I think, have to be considered another clear winner as well. We'll start with just the Green Bay Packers. 2 huge signings. Green Bay Packers going out and getting Josh Jacobs. Huge signing. I think that was a huge surprise. A lot of folks thought he was going to stay a Raider his whole career, but Josh Jacobs goes to the Packers. Then they release Aaron Jones, who goes over to the Vikings, which you could say in a way actually kind of makes it like maybe not a winner, but because of the revenge play in division. However, getting the likes of Xavier McKinney is just such a huge signing, Mike, that I can't speak enough about it. And I think that signing alone, with sprinkling in the Josh Jacobs signing, makes him a clear winner this free agency period. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think Josh Jacobs was one of the probably prized pieces that might go. And, there were a lot of running backs on the market, right? This year. Jacobs is younger than Derrick Henry. Still, I think, has a lot of pop and a lot of burst. And Green Bay has had a power run game over the last few years, but I think Jacobs is a step up from anyone they've even had, So I concur with you on this one, Derek. I'm interested as we move on to your next couple. I'm glad you listed both the Texans and the Eagles as winners. The funny one is, who is the bigger winner? Because the Eagles, of course, Barkley chose them over the Texans, but Houston still gets a pretty good consolation prize that doesn't cost them nearly as much money. So, in a way, having, Joe Mixon, who's been a very productive running back for, the Bengals over the years, still a win when it doesn't cost them as much money. Meanwhile, Barkley does get paid in Philly, at least for the 1 year. And he goes out as arguably, he's a huge wild card, right, Derek? Some people think that in the right offensive system, Saquon Barkley is the best running back in football, the most talented. What do you see coming out of Philadelphia?
Saquon Barkley going to Philadelphia and being in division. Ooh, God, that's got to rub Giants fans the wrong way. And it rubs the Barber brothers the wrong way, I'm sure, as well. However, key departures there over in Philadelphia were the likes of, some of the retirements that were just announced, with Jason Kelce retiring, Fletcher Cox. I honestly thought, Mike, going into this was going to be a team that we were looking at as a loser in free agency, because you have the likes of the center that has carried the tush push, and a key central figure in that system for so long. Him retiring and Fletcher Cox retiring is a huge loss, but just the signings they made up for with that. Saquon Barkley alone doesn't make this a great free agency period for the Philadelphia Eagles. I would even argue that I'm not that enticed by the Saquon Barkley signing for the Eagles specifically. Now, I'm not downplaying him, but I just think the signing of Bryce Huff is probably the most significant signing they have done in a while. Now, the likes of Saquon's very flashy, but Huff is one of the most tremendous defensive players there is in the game right now. I think it's a huge loss for the Jets as well. And also, signing Gardner Johnson, is another huge signing to land, and I think this is good to put Sirianni basically on the hot seat immediately into this season. What do you think, Mike?
The other big one too, Dirk, is that they locked up Dickerson too for the future, so they were able to retain a really important piece of their offensive line as well. Dirk, I think Philadelphia can retire the tush push because Barkley in the RPO is going to be a nightmare for anyone anyway. Now it seems like on 4th and 1, rather than Jalen Hurts getting pushed, teams are going to have to defend whether or not Hurts is going to keep it himself or he's going to hand it to Barkley, maybe the most dynamic running back in football. So, yeah, I think Philadelphia, Dirk. I mean, I've got Eagles colors on right now. Fly, Eagles, fly, baby. The wings are flapping. Let's go. Go Birds. But anyway, no, I think Philly, Dirk, rebound after this free agency, class. And if they have a solid draft class, the Eagles are probably looking at being Super Bowl contenders once again, which isn't surprising. The surprise was that they fell off at the end of the season this year. I don't think that it's a terrible leap forward for them to get back into that contention. Now, Dirk, let's turn it over to another one of your winners, the Houston Texans, who I think we all expect to be potential contenders next year. What do you like about Houston's class?
All right, so Houston lost a few key pieces, right? So Devin Singletary at the end of the season, he was really cooking for the Texans. And Jonathan Grenard, also another loss the end for the Texans, and alongside the linebacker Blake Cashman, also another key departure there. But the key re-signings is Dalton Schultz. They didn't have to franchise tag him. He is not a Travis Kelce, right? He's not the game-changing tight end, but he is a solid tight end. And even finding a solid tight end that is a great pass-catching tight end in the NFL is a very rare commodity. So I think that's a great re-signing. It actually comes more from the trade that I'm the most surprised and where I put them as a winner. Getting Joe Mixon from the Bengals has to be a clear win here for the Houston Texans. I think that he is one of the most undervalued running backs in the NFL. He quietly had an all-star season last year, continues to just pump out numbers, and it's not just the system. Quite frankly, it was just a train wreck in Cincinnati last year, and he comes out salvaging what could be a horrible season, puts up some huge numbers, and I've always been a huge Joe Mixon fan. Look, I get there's some things that people don't love about him, especially some antics, but what do you think about that signing, Mike? Or that trade, I should say.
I think I brought it up a little bit earlier, Dirk. I think that Mixon is great value for the Texans. He's not their number one. They wanted Barkley. The Eagles got him, but they don't have to pay Mixon like Barkley. And in fact, I don't think the deal is even close. I think it was like $8 million 2 years or something like that. So Mixon, based on that, really gives you some more flexibility too for a team that already has a lot of cap room. Who knows what they're going to be able to finesse here in the second wave of free agency. Also, just keeping the cap in good shape moving forward. I mean, the Texans might still be looking at next year as a momentum forward year, and then year 3 of Stroud is the year they really make their push for the Super Bowl. So their big thing might be getting into really good cap shape for next year as well. I think Houston is positioned to become a real force in the AFC. And I would say, Dirk, it's unless you see Trevor Lawrence really take a huge leap, which could happen. If Lawrence does take a big leap in Jacksonville, you have one contender in the South to Houston. Otherwise, they're going to run that division moving forward, kind of like Kansas City has run the West.
Hey, Mike, you can't be overlooking the likes of Joe Flacco for the Indianapolis Colts.
You love Joe Flacco. I do not. Joe Flacco, it is a bad situation for Indianapolis next year if Flacco gets in. We are nearly in the second quarter of the century. It's almost past 2025, and we're talking about Joe Flacco starting games at the end of the first quarter of the century. Don't know that you want to be there. The Colts need Anthony Richardson back and healthy, and they need him to be productive to be anything moving forward.
Back to the Future.
Dirk, one more that I'm going to pose to you, and I think this might be for you a net negative. I think for me, I see the upsides. If there's one team that probably is the most polarizing of free agency, it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens, right? You lose Patrick Queen, you bring in Derrick Henry, an aging superstar. But you have to think, Dirk, Henry still had 1,000 years last year in the Texans with the likes of a first-year starter in Levis, not a whole lot of support. He gets paired with the two-time MVP, who is a dual threat, running threat quarterback. The Ravens have a power run game. He takes it just seems like that could be a really dangerous fit in Baltimore.
Yeah, Mike, I'm right there with you. I honestly, when I saw Derrick Henry went to the Ravens, I was like, man, I don't want to have to tackle that guy. I don't want to have to tackle anybody on that offense. It seems like a beastly combo on paper, but here's some of the, not only is Patrick Queen, linebacker, a huge departure for them, they also are losing the likes of guard John Simpson, right? That's a huge loss for them. They're losing Geno Stone, safety, and they're also losing Tyler Ott. So these are four different other players that, in addition to Patrick Queen, that they're losing. Sorry, I failed to mention Gus Edwards is now leaving as well, who has been a reliable backup because J.K. Dobbins has always been the one that was going to take the reins right there in the last few years. But, I mean, I like the signing of Derrick Henry, but I don't think that it's going to get over the hill of what they're trying to accomplish. It's obviously a win-now mentality. Like you're saying, an aging superstar. Derrick Henry is, surprised, I think, everybody going in from how he has played in the NFL. I don't think anybody thought he would be quite as good as he's just been an absolute terror in the Titans. However, Mike, if there's going to be a place where he's going to be super successful, it's Baltimore. I'm going to still give this like a high. Like, if I had to give a grade on it, it would be like a high B, like a B+. But the losing all of those guys we just talked about, I'm not sure. It feels like a Pyrrhic victory, if you get what I'm saying.
It'll be interesting to see what they do, though, in the second wave of free agency as well. I think sometimes linebackers, there is some ability. They also might be looking at someone in the draft. They might be going younger. And so that's also a possibility. The Ravens have done this time and time again where they select the linebacker late in the first round or early in the second round, and it pans out well for them. So Baltimore might be reloading in the draft. Dirk, one more team, too, that we'd be remiss to talk about. You brought them up earlier, but this was your final one of your winners. That is the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champions. And I would agree with you. Maybe the biggest win that the Kansas City Chiefs got in free agency was getting Patrick Mahomes to restructure $20 million off of his contract, which helped them bring back Chris Jones, which helped them do a lot of things that all of a sudden has Kansas City looking like a team that can again contend moving forward. You're shaking your head like a bobblehead.
Yeah, it's all about the re-signings on this, Mike. I mean, you're keeping a championship team together, and I expected to see the likes of Chris Jones gone day one, and the fact that they were able to keep Chris Jones, Ladarius Sneed, and Drew Tranquill all together on that same team, re-sign them, that's huge. I mean, that's the biggest question when it comes to Super Bowl teams. How many of them are going to flock away? Think about the Broncos after winning the Super Bowl. In how many years was Emmanuel Sanders the lone guy, that was on that team that still remained with the Broncos? Some other things to note, though. They did lose they lost two guys. One was an offensive lineman in Alec Reddy, and then they also lost, I believe it was a linebacker out of Willie Gay Jr., which is, holes to be filled, but that's manageable when you're going into the draft, as opposed to losing now your key, cornerstone part of your, defensive line. You're losing all-star cornerbacks and linebackers. You know what I'm saying? I think they have made the task much more manageable where they can literally fill needs in the draft, I think, and be successful.
I would agree, Dirk. I mean, the Chiefs are aging a bit. Kelsey is old. Chris Jones, re-signing him, though, is massive. I mean, I don't think that the Chiefs are a guarantee next year. The three-peat is really tough to pull off, but they're probably in as good of a chance of doing it as when New England had a shot at it in 2005 and lost in the divisional round. So, I think Kansas City has a shot. There's a chance they may at least get to the AFC Championship, if not the Super Bowl, which is crazy. No one has done that since the 49ers almost three-peated, I should say, back in like 88 through 90. So, yeah, I would go with you, Dirk. The Chiefs might be the biggest winner by retaining that team. We'll see how it all plays out, but it looks good on paper.